Please welcome the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist.
I was hoping for Taxman. Okay. We're winning. That didn't always used to mean a lot. There used to be two parties. One was the North, one was the South. All you knew about somebody if they told you they were Republican was that they were born north of the Mason-Dixon line. And there were little old ladies in Mississippi who agreed with Ronald Reagan on everything and voted for George McGovern because Sherman had been mean to Atlanta recently. We now have two competing coalitions, and they're coherent, and they came about during the political lifetime of Ronald Reagan. One is a coalition of individuals and groups, the people that meet in the meetings that was just talked about. John Caldera chairs a meeting here with the Independence Institute in Denver. Everybody around the table is there because on the issue that moves their vote, what they ask of the government is to leave them alone. Homeschoolers do not ask for subsidies, do not ask for parades telling everybody how swell they are. They simply wish to be left alone. Second Amendment community, 19 million Americans now with concealed carry weapons permits across the country. They just wish to be left alone. Small businessmen and women, don't regulate and tax my business, my profession out of existence. A million Uber and Lyft drivers who Hillary Clinton said she was going to shut down because she didn't like the independent contractor law, can now flourish and be left alone. All the communities of faith. We have evangelical Protestants, conservative Catholics, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Mormons, who do not agree on how you get to heaven or how, but they agree they should be left alone to practice their own faith, transmit it to their own children and their friends. That is their number one concern in life, and they wish to be left alone to do that. They're not asking for Baptist stamps. They wish to be left alone. So around our coalition, we have a collection of people who can work well together to expand liberty and make sure that the government is limited to those things that are mentioned in the Constitution, like an army big enough to keep the Canadians on their side of the border. Make sure, keep an eye on them. Around our table, everybody is there because on the issue that moves their vote, they wish to be left alone, and that is why we can work together. The person who goes to church all day may look over at the guy who wants to make money all day and say, that's not how I spend my time. They may both look over at the guy who fondles his guns all day and say, well, that's not how we spend our time. It's not important that everybody in the coalition agree what to do with their time, but that they agree that they should each be free to lead their own lives, raise their own families, take care of themselves, worship as they wish, and live their lives as they wish. Thank you. Now, I got a call a number of years ago because Hillary Clinton was doing a speech in upstate New York where she said what progressives needed is one of those meetings like Grover runs. And so the person said, what do you think about that? And I said, I explained how the meeting worked and how not everybody agreed on everything, but they voted for the same person who would leave your kids alone, your schools alone, your homeschool alone, your charter school alone, your church and synagogue and mosque alone, and leave your business alone. The guy who has to get it, the lady who has to get it, is the person asking for the votes of everybody. I said, how would the left's coalition work? How does it work? It's a takings coalition. Everybody around the table views the proper role of government as taking things from other people and giving it to them. Big city political machines, government union leadership, the two wings of the welfare dependency issue, those people who are locked into welfare dependency and those who make $120,000 a year, managing the dependency of others, making sure none of them get jobs and become Republicans. Around the table, the rest of the table, you have all the coercive utopians, the people smarter and better than we are, the people who know how we should be running our lives, the people who mandate the toilets that don't flush completely, those wonderful light bulbs that convince you have glaucoma. On the Sabbath, it's very important to them that you separate the white glass from the brown glass, from the green glass for the recycling priests when they come by. And they have a list of things you have to do and a list of things you're not allowed to do that is slightly longer and more tedious than Leviticus. It goes on and on and on. And these are not, you have to do this, you can't do this, on and on. And these are going to be run by the city, by the way. And that coalition is not made up of complete friends. Now, they can be happy and get along if we're stupid enough to raise taxes and throw cash into the center of that table. If we do that, and that's the whole thing, we're in Colorado right now. We are at ground zero on the fight for should government have unlimited access to your paycheck or not. Proposition CC, remember they wounded the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, Tabor, a number of years ago with C and D. They wounded it, they weakened it, now they're back to finish it off. The Takings Coalition wants no limit to how deeply they can reach into your life and your pockets, and when they take your money, they take your time. They take time away from you and your family and everything else that you wish to do in your life because you have to go earn money to give it to them, and that is time away from family. So we need to protect Tabor as it is and return it to its previous strength, defeating CC, which is dishonestly written. It says, without raising taxes, and then it's going to do all this cool stuff. What they don't tell you is Tabor says there's a limit to how much they can tax, and when they get more than that, they've got to give it back in lower taxes. They don't want to have to do that. That, in my book, is a tax increase. It's a rather dramatic tax increase. Colorado shows how constitutions are supposed to work. The whole point of the United States Constitution is it doesn't matter completely who you elect as president or House or Senate, because there's a limited list of things they're allowed to do, and there's a limited amount of damage they can do, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and there's a very short version of Leviticus and mostly it's things you can't do. Matter of fact, it's almost all things you cannot do. You can't mess with people's churches. You cannot mess with their ability to defend themselves. You cannot mess with their freedom of speech. There's a whole list. You can't go into the house and steal their stuff. You can't put soldiers in the house. Boom, 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 boom. Don't do this, don't do this. And then you can elect, and we have elected people of questionable judgment over the last 200 years, and the country stands because the Constitution stands. And the reason why all the groups that studied governors used to say, Colorado has a string of wonderful judges. What was it? Tabor kept them from looting everything that wasn't nailed down. And they all looked good compared to everybody else. Tabor was what made Colorado special year after year. We had some less than optimal governors, but they couldn't run riot. If CC passes, Proposition CC, and breaks and permanently damages Tabor, that protection will be gone and difficult to ever get back. Around the left's table, again, if you throw money at the left's table, they can get along. They can work together. And it looks like that scene in the bank robbery movie, right after the bank robbery. One for you, one for you. Everybody around the table is very happy because everybody's getting cash. But after a while, after the bank robbery, after the tax increase, the money dwindles, and the pile of money in the middle of the table dwindles down. And it begins to look like the Kennedy kids surrounding a table with one six-pack in the middle of it. And they're dying. What's going on here? There's not enough money to keep everybody in the left happy, because that's why they're back for a tax increase and to disable and destroy Tabor. Because the left we're made up of people who want to run our own lives and let everybody else run their lives, as long as don't interfere with my life, don't steal other people's stuff, got it, don't let people come across the border and take us over, limited number of things the government does, otherwise leave us alone to run our lives, our families, as we see fit. We can get along because we're not in conflict on any vote-moving issue. You want to be an Uber driver? That's nice. I'm a Presbyterian. Okay, no harm, no foul, okay? And give you a sales pitch for Presbyterian, I'll let you tell me about Uber, but I'm not telling you what you have to do, okay? Our coalition can get along because we're not in conflict on a vote-moving issue. The left is not made up, as they sit around the table eating other people's money. They are not made up of friends and allies. They are competing parasites. If we raise taxes and throw them in the middle of the table, they will run rampant again. But if we say no new taxes, if we keep our word, if we do not raise taxes, if we protect Tabor and stop throwing more money into the center of the table, the left various structures will look at each other and decide, well, now it looks like that part of the movie in the lifeboat, you know, who do we throw overboard, who do we eat? You know, they will toss other people away from the table, and then there'll be fewer Democratic precinct workers at the end of the day because they're not on the government payroll. The whole country's watching how you defend Tabor. We would like to get other states to follow Tabor. When Tabor got weakened, even with Republican support, it made it difficult to explain the importance to other people. This is an opportunity to explain the importance to Tabor to Coloradans so that you win, and secondly, to the rest of the 57 states, as I understand it. We have two advantages over our friends on the left. And that is, first of all, our ideas work. We can try them in one state, like Tabor, and then share them with other states. We can do right to try in Arizona and take it to other states. We can take term limits and run them to other states. We can have low taxes in Florida and all the other, no income tax in Florida and all the other states. I'd like to do something like that. Good ideas can travel from one state to other states and then up to Washington at the national level. The left's ideas only can be imposed from the top in D.C. because if they started by doing it in Vermont, it would fail in Vermont and everyone would go, that's a dumb idea. They didn't do Obamacare in Vermont first. They didn't take some small unsuspecting state and do that to them because they knew it wouldn't work. Matter of fact, Vermont did vote for single-payer health care, and they repealed it. My home state of Massachusetts, prior to emigrating to the United States, I lived in Massachusetts. And I decided to stay here. In Massachusetts, we have a single rate tax. You can't have a graduated income tax, and we defend that. In Massachusetts, under Dukakis, they actually passed government-run health care when he was running for president in 1988, so he could say, oh, isn't it great? Didn't go into effect, but they passed it. As soon as he lost, they repealed it, because this will destroy Massachusetts. We can't do this. We were planning to do it to the country, but not to one state at a time. So our ideas can start at the state level. Great think tanks like the Independence Institute that you have here. I mentioned John Caldera's leadership there. You can take ideas, do them in one state, move them across state lines. The other way we make more of us and fewer of them is when we create a liberty, concealed carry permits. Back 35 years ago, there were almost no concealed carry permits in the country. Today, there are 18, 19 million people with concealed carry permits and a dozen states that don't require permits. Those are people who are never giving up their Second Amendment rights. "35 years ago, in 48 states, you could go to prison for homeschooling. You're violating the law. Prison. Today, in all 57 states, we have fairly good rules that allow homeschooling. 2 million kids homeschool. They win all the spelling bees, and they will never let that be taken away from them. There are 10 million people who vape. They've stopped smoking cigarettes. They're vaping. They're taking care of their own health. The Democrats want to tax it, regulate out of existence. That's never going to happen because they've already elected a senator, Ron Johnson, when the Democrats wanted to make vaping illegal. The Republican candidate organized every vape shop. And this is not marijuana. This is the vape pretend cigarette stuff. And they won a Senate race. We won a House race on this stuff as well. People who are given a freedom don't want it taken away, and they will focus on that freedom. When you cut taxes, it's very difficult to put that tax increase back for a very long time. Even the Bush tax cuts that the left hated, we kept it for 85% of Americans. The Trump tax cuts, I believe, will be made permanent for all Americans into eternity. This is going to be a key part of this next election. And so, as we go forward, there was that wonderful scene in 1953 when the East Germans were revolting against the communist government, and Bertolt Brecht, a left-wing playwright, somebody stuck a microphone in front of him and said, so what happened? Because you're not supposed to have a people's revolt, a workers' revolt against a workers' paradise. And he said, well, we obviously have to elect a new people. Couldn't be the government's fault. They're communists. They do everything perfectly. But Bertolt Brecht, have to elect a new people. We elect a new people every time we get somebody to homeschooled, and they and their family become committed friends of liberty. Every time somebody becomes a self-employed individual, when you have a 401k and IRA, and you now have something to pretend when the left is attacking big business. That's my retirement, you jerk, back off. We create more liberties, we create more people who want to protect those liberties, we create more of us, and we will eventually bring all of those nice people who are trapped in the left over to opportunity and over to a better way of living, not at the expense of others, but on behalf of themselves and their own families. 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to win, guys. Thank you.